passing bells for these who die as cattle. Only the monstrous anger of the guns. Only the stuttering rifle's rapid rattle can patter out their hasty orisons. No mockeries now for them, no prayers, no bells, nor any voice of mourning save the choirs, the shrill, demented choirs of wailing shells, and bugles calling for them from sad shires. What candles may be held to speed them all? Not in the hands of boys, but in their eyes shall shine the holy glimmer of goodbyes. The pallor of girls' brows shall be their pall, their flowers the tenderness of patient minds, and each slow dusk a drawing down of blinds.
Today we're going to be having a look at Anthem for Doomed Youth by Wilfred Owen. Before we get into the poem, I'd like to start off with the title. What is the title hinting at? We've got the word anthem, usually defined as a song or hymn of praise or a rousing popular song. And then we've got doomed youth, young soldiers doomed to die. Do these two things really fit with each other? What do you think Owen's title is hinting at? It's the first question for today. We're now going to move on to the rest of the poem. So the poem begins with a question. What passing bells for these who die as cattle? The passing bells are the church bells, which are normally rung to mark someone's death. And then we've got there as well a simile. For these who die as cattle. So the simile is suggesting slaughter. We're not talking about human lives here, we're talking about cattle. So these soldiers' deaths are quite inhumane. I'd like you to also have a look at this word here, these. They don't say what passing bells for those who die as cattle. He says what passing bells for these who die as cattle. And that's a deliberate word choice. I really want you to think about why he may have used the word these instead of those. And I'll leave that up to you and we'll talk about it in class. So he asks the reader a question, what passing bells for these who die as cattle? And then he goes on to answer the question. First off, there's no church bells ringing for these young men. It's only the monstrous anger of the guns. Then he also starts off, or also says, not only just the monstrous anger of the guns, but the stuttering rifle's rapid rattle, which can patter out their hasty orisons. So the stuttering rifles, personification. But what he's saying here is that rifle fire is the only kind of prayer for the dying soldiers. We'll move on to the next slide. No mockeries now for them, no prayers nor bells. Seems kind of mixed up, this line, but it's like that for a reason. He is calling the prayers and bells mockeries. And I want you to think about why he might be calling the prayers and bells mockeries. These are a particular type of rituals. And I want you to think about how these rituals may or may not be helping the soldiers when they're on the battlefield. They're also not getting any voices of mourning, but they are getting a particular type of choirs. Okay, this is another traditionally religious image, that of the choir. The choir that he's talking about, though, is being used as a metaphor. So the choir is the shrill, demented choirs of wailing shells, and that really gives you a kind of sensory image here. That shrill noise, the demented noise of these wailing shells. And lastly, and bugles calling for them from sad shires. As if the bugles, with their sound, are like a voice. They're personified. They're calling for the dead from their sad shires or from their sad towns where the daughters or the wives or the sons or the grandparents are waiting for these soldiers who won't be returning. The next stanza also begins with a question, and the question is, what candles may be held to speed them all? So Owen's asking here, what ceremony can be held to help these soldiers pass on peacefully? And then he answers the question for us. So the candles won't be in the hands of boys, but in their eyes. So what is he speaking about here? Obviously, he's not just talking about candles. The ceremony will be in the tears, which is actually more real than the ceremonies with candles. And those candles, although they shine and glimmer, but so do tears. Tears shine and glimmer. The pallor of girls' brows shall be their pall. And this image here is talking about the sad, drained faces of girls shall actually be the pall, shall actually be draped over the dead soldiers' coffins. And who could these girls be referring to? They could be the significant others or the daughters of the soldiers who won't be returning. And again, this brings to our attention the suffering caused by the death of the soldiers, okay? Not just the suffering by the soldiers themselves who have died, but the suffering to the entire world of the soldiers, including the people that have been left behind at home. The next line here is actually a contentious line, and it can be read in a number of ways. So I want you to have a look at it yourself, and then we'll discuss this line in class. So their flowers, the tenderness of patient minds. What could this be? It could be read in maybe a negative light or a positive light. Who are these patient minds? Are they too patient? Is patience a good trait in this scenario? Think about it. And then the final line of the poem. And each slow dusk a drawing down of blinds. Well, this is an image of death, which matches to like a closing or an ending of life. So the drawing down of blinds. But it also is read as a symbol of the way that people are trying to keep the reality of war away from them. They're shutting it out. They're drawing down their blinds. They're closing their eyes to what is actually going on. And that is a very powerful end line to the poem. So we will be discussing this further in class. Thank you.